Did you know that you can stimulate your GLP-1 receptor sites in your body that right now many people are taking a medication to do? You can do it naturally, and I'm going to get into some of that in this video. But a lot of people are taking things like Ozempic and Wagovvy and other types of pharmaceuticals, which are targeting that GLP-1 receptor site in your body. You may or may not know what that's doing and why you might want to consider a natural approach to it. I am not telling the people that are taking that you should stop, and I think you should work with your doctor, but this shouldn't be a separate thing. This should be included in what you're doing. And if you're not taking those medications, I think you ought to consider why this might be a good plan for you. So first of all, what is GLP and where did this come from, this kind of onslaught of medications that target that? Well, we have receptor sites inside of our body that are called glucagon-like peptide. Basically, your small intestine makes this after you eat. And the effect of that is to decrease your appetite, to slow down your digestion. It helps block making sugar out of the food you're eating, glucagon, and it also helps increase your insulin secretion in your body, which helps you to utilize the food that you're eating. Now, with pharmaceuticals, you can get a bigger impact because it's kind of overriding the natural system of the body and basically overwhelming the system. Because of that, some people have a lot of negative side effects and they don't tolerate the medication. Also, you have to stay on those medications in order to continue to keep the weight off. And I don't know if that's always explained or if people even care that that's the fact, but imagine having to take this for the rest of your life. A lot of people that I work with, a lot of my patients, are not ever thrilled about taking a medicine, period, but then to imagine taking it for the rest of their life is even more of a kind of life sentence in their eyes. So you may feel like it's worth it because you're getting benefit from it, but I would suggest that there are some side effects with the medication. You may find that right now the benefit outweighs the side effect, or maybe not, or this is still a fairly new medication or medications, there's a lot out there. And through my years in the field of medicine, I have seen medications that come and go based off of long-term issues that can come up. So I always step with caution into this realm because I think that a big part of the issue is not addressing the root of the problem. And if we don't do that and we really focus on symptoms or just using a drug to try to handle the problem, then I think that we are very short-sighted. It's very temporary, but it isn't a long-term solution. So the information that I talk about might sound sort of basic to you, but I also think that it's very interesting when you understand the scientific aspect of what you eat, how you eat, and some of the other factors that can influence your healthy weight. You may not need to lose weight, maybe you need to lose a lot of weight, but being healthy and having wellness applies to everybody. And so I think that taking these concepts and applying them specifically in a more broad understanding of health, I think is a very good way to approach wellness. And I would love for you to give me some feedback on whether this type of content interests you. But I'm going to get into some of the details related to the natural way to stimulate those GLP receptor sites. And right now, as we said, the medications are doing that, but you can do that naturally. It may have a bigger impact when you take a drug because, as I said before, it kind of is overwhelming your system. But with all things, good things usually take time, and I understand also from, goodness, has it been 28 years of being in medicine, that every person's situation is different. So if you have had a lifelong history of being overweight, obese, or struggling in this area, I am not here to either judge you or to act flippant about your struggle, because we all have struggles in different ways, and that would be the last thing I would ever want to do, is minimize what you have struggled with. I know you've tried very hard multiple times, and it can be extremely frustrating to feel like you have tried, maybe you've lost weight and then you've regained it and repeated that cycle. And at some point, you just do what you feel like you need to do. And so again, no judgment. I just would like you to consider either adding this in, or even if you are sort of on the fence, just kind of taking in the information, because I think a lot of people don't even really realize that the way these drugs came about was because there are receptor sites that we can actually naturally start to affect by the way we eat and what we eat. And that is a good thing to do, no matter with or without medication, right? So a lot of what I have done through the years of being in the medical field is work with diabetic patients, and a lot of diabetic patients also have weight-related issues. So I have worked one-on-one with a lot of people over many years, and these concepts really apply for somebody who is diabetic, as well as somebody that just is interested in becoming healthier, perhaps losing weight, and everything in between. So, as I said, the GLP is a hormone that is secreted, or let out, I guess, from your small intestine after you eat. And it helps you manage your blood sugar, it helps you manage your appetite, and it is part of your digestive system. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a drug. In fact, a lot of the medication side effects is it slows down your digestion because it stops you from emptying your stomach as fast. And so some people have a lot of digestive issues related to that slowing of the digestive process. And I kind of suspect that maybe years down the road, we're going to say it wasn't really a good idea to slow things down like that, because we should be cleaning out that system regularly. What happens when we're holding in this stuff longer than the way that God intended? I don't know that that's going to be a good thing, but time will tell. I just like to do things as naturally as possible, if possible. So what are some of the ways that you can naturally stimulate these GLP-1 receptor sites? And one is through protein. So I'm going to get into just the actual foods and then some of the aspects of how you go about eating that can also affect this. So the first is protein. You're going to look at things primarily that are going to be, if you're vegan or not, you can definitely get into this category with any kind of meats. So you're going to have your, as much as possible, organic or grass-fed, but if you can't afford it, okay. Meat, eggs, legumes, which is going to be beans, lentils, edamame, things of that nature. This category is going to be, you know, meats are going to be red meat, turkey, chicken, fish, all of those kind of things. Those are going to help you secrete that GLP that causes the satiety. It makes you not as hungry. It makes you feel more full. Same thing with healthy fats. So you've got avocado. I'm going to take a closer picture of this when I'm done. Avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds, flax, chia, things of that nature, okay? Fiber. Okay, fiber, I took some notes down so that I would not forget all the different aspects, but soluble and insoluble fiber are two types of fiber. Insoluble usually makes things move faster. The transit time through the intestine is faster, and that's going to be things that, like the peel of a vegetable or a fruit or bran, those things cause things to move faster. Soluble tends to bulk up, which is good because the bulk makes it easier for things to slide through the intestine. So in this case, we're talking primarily about soluble, but both types of fiber are really important. Peels and bran and things like that are really good. But in soluble fiber, it is fermented by your gut bacteria into small chain fatty acids, and that promotes that GLP-1 secretion, which again helps lower your blood sugar. It causes your blood sugars to be more even, so you're not having high blood sugar spikes and then drops. Fiber helps keep things kind of in the middle ground where you're not having the up and down. We can make another video all about blood sugar, but suffice to say, fiber has a really great effect of putting the brakes on the food that you're eating so that it doesn't cause a spike in your blood sugar and then a big drop that makes you feel bad or makes you want to eat more. A lot of times people will eat no fiber type of processed food or carbohydrates like white bread, white rice, chips, you know, whatever that's a carbohydrate but it has no fiber. And they wonder why they can eat and eat and eat and eat so much of it. Part of it is because of the lack of fiber. It doesn't hit those receptor sites and cause that GLP that is causing you to feel like your appetite is settling down. So in this soluble fiber realm, we're talking about things that are whole grains. How do you know if it is a whole grain? So you want to primarily look at the fiber content on the nutrition label and see if there's fiber in there. At least it's got to be over a gram. I would say getting closer toward 4 or 5 grams per serving. So if you're looking at bread and you wonder, is this a whole grain bread or not? The first thing you should look at is not whether it says whole grain or whole wheat. Look at the label where it says dietary fiber, and it will tell you how many grams of fiber. A lot of these whole wheat are 0 or 1 grams of fiber. That's not enough. That's not actually a whole grain. So you want to make sure you're getting whole grains, legumes again, which is going to be kind of doing double duty. Legumes are really good because they have protein, but they also have fiber. And so let's start putting these down. Whole grains. Legumes. Vegetables, and try to keep the peel, cooked or uncooked, is fine. Fruit, try not to juice anything. Try to keep the whole peel, eat the whole fruit. Try not to just extract the juice and take out the fiber, which is what a lot of juicers do. So you want to be careful of that because you're losing the fiber, which is part of the benefit. Seeds, and then that's going to be over similar to our fats. So some of these cross over. So we have chia and flax. My handwriting is not the best. Okay. These are kind of the big categories: protein, healthy fats, fiber, which is including your vegetables. So this might look like a meal is coming together here. You can also look at things like probiotics and fermented foods, which is going to be yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, tempeh. Those are really good for this natural stimulation. So probiotics, you can also take a probiotic, but it's really good to get it in your fermented foods. I should have my daughter do this writing. It'll be much easier to read. And dark chocolate. But you want it to be greater than or equal to 70% cacao. You want to have a fairly small amount, because I think even at just one little square is, it's still going to be higher in calories. Okay, so this is our basic outline of naturally stimulating foods that will help you to feel full, not have your blood sugar go up, and it actually can naturally help you lose weight as well because of it targeting that receptor site. Some of the other more behavioral things related to this that we know actually stimulate those receptors is when you eat. So let's make a little line here. And so your circadian rhythm with when you eat. So when it's better in the daylight hours, you have more of a ability to secrete this GLP when you are in a daytime. So trying to not do those late night. That might take a little doing for some of you. I'm an early to bed person, so that's not hard for me, but also plate method. So the way that you put this all together, plate method, whoops, spell that right, plate method. Plate method is, let's see if I can draw us a picture of this. So when you look at your plate, you have protein, you have non-starchy vegetables here, you have fruit, or it could just be more non-starchy vegetables here. And then you have your starchy vegetables here. Doesn't have to be exactly that place on the plate. But basically half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, or vegetables that are not starchy. Starchy would be potatoes, peas, things like that, and protein. So even if you go to a restaurant, you don't have to have a scale and weighing things and all of that jazz. You just eyeball your plate. And this is a great way to think about your daily breakfast, lunch, dinner, or however you normally eat. Also, fats are considered kind of a side over here, and that can be incorporated as well, coming from these healthy fats. Okay, then the sequence of when you eat each of these things can make a difference in how effective that GLP is. So protein and or the healthy fat with fiber, so your non-starchy vegetable or your fruit, before you have the starchy vegetables. So you might eat your salad and your chicken, and then you eat your whole grain bread, or whatever whole grain you made. Maybe you made some millet or something like that. So if you started off with your salad, that's a simple way to sequence your meal to actually target that GLP activation. So I think that's probably the easiest thing. It's interesting, my daughter has always, since she was tiny, she always ate her vegetables first, and then she moved on to the other things. And I'm like, wow, you have been doing this your whole entire life. So it also, because you're getting fiber right in the beginning, you are already signaling those receptor sites, but you are also slowing down your digestion from the get-go. So I would recommend that for anybody. If you can start with a salad, that's really good. The other thing is slow down, increase your chewing, and be mindful. Have a calm environment. This also stimulates those receptor sites. Smaller bites, set your fork down, things like that. We know that stress increases cortisol. That is going to blunt the effect of this. So as much as possible, try to step away from your work. Try to not have stressful conversations when you are talking with other people at the table. Try not to work and eat at the same time. Exercise also has an impact. Any type of exercise has an impact on stimulating those receptor sites and increasing that GLP. And sleep. And these are obviously things that you may have heard many a time, but did you know they actually have an impact on your GLP in your body, those receptor sites, and your natural production of that? So it's a perfect reason to get back on a very balanced, back to nature, back to the way God intended for us to eat, slow down, eat more during the daylight, like our ancestors who went to bed when it started to get dark. They didn't start pulling out the chips and cookies. Plate method is such a great way to get in a habit of eating in a healthy way without having a bunch of regimented rules and regulations, because sometimes that is something people fall off of. I know people love diets and they love to be given a list of rules and follow the rules, and they know that they're following the rules and all of that. The problem that I find is that all of that sounds really attractive until about 2 weeks in. And then you're like burned out and tired of it and everything. So trying to get into a habit of it being a natural rhythm of life, that this is how, we were meant to eat. This is how I eat. I mean, I don't always eat perfectly, but for the most part, this is kind of my lifestyle. And I do think that it can really, over time, do the long-term healthy plan, long-term healthy related stimulation of everything within the body, not just putting in a drug. And for so many people, you may be starting off because that is something that you've already gotten started on, is medications. And again, I'm not suggesting that you get off of them at this point, but it can all coexist with this. And if you're considering any of the medications, I would recommend you start with this anyway and really think through, am I really implementing the things that are gonna take me through the rest of my life in a really healthy way? And if you're not, which area could you start with? I would even say start with one meal. See if you can make this, incorporate this format into just one meal. You don't have to necessarily do a bunch of new recipes. You don't have to come up with a brand new food plan, but just taking this and implementing it for one meal a day or a week. Can you find a way to keep your eating more in the daytime and not after dark? Can you slow down and step away from everything and pay attention, chew, take your time? All of these things in the long run, I think, are really going to make an impact. I would love to hear from you if you do any of these things. Do you have any questions related to it? And do you feel like this is something that you've tried before? And if you have, what made you fall away from it? I would love to hear from you. We can make lots of more content about ways that you can eat healthier, live that on fire fit life that I love. And I hope that this gives you something to think about. Thanks so much for being here. And I hope that you're living today on fire.